Hi everyone, so for my assignment 2, I decided to talk about Magic the Gathering. So for learning objectives, there's a few things you'll need to know before you play Magic, such as basic math skills such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and you'll also need basic concepts of attack and defense. So for example, when someone is attacking you and you have to block or not block, how much toughness do you have left, and etc. So some things that players will learn, they'll learn a sense of logic and a sense of strategy, and they'll also learn to measure pros and cons, such as deciding when you want to block an attack or not. A pro of blocking an attack is that you don't lose life points, but your creature dies. And then if you don't block an attack, you will lose life points, but your creature will stay alive. So some knowledge that might transfer out of the game is when to attack or defend in a martial arts battle or during sports like boxing or fencing or anything like that. And you might also learn when to defend yourself in arguments with friends and when you should let things slide. For the MDA framework, some mechanics of the game. I mentioned this last time, but there are a couple different kinds of cards in Magic. There's mana, there's creatures, there's artifacts and enchantments, and there's instants and sorcery. And these all interact with each other in the dynamics part of the game. So a sample game would be you would draw 7 cards or 8 cards if you're going first, and then you would play a land, and then you would pass it off to the other person. Then you would draw a card on your next turn, always at the beginning of every turn. And then you would keep doing that until you have enough mana out on the field to get a creature or an artifact or something out. And then this will keep going until eventually someone decides to attack the other person with one of their creatures. And then that person will have to decide if they want to defend that attack or not. And this will keep going on until someone runs out of life points. So some aesthetics in this game are discovery, because there's always new cards coming out. There's fantasy, because there's lots of different types of creatures and everything. There's fellowship, because you get to play Magic with your friends, and there is definitely lots of challenge involved in the strategies. And also for aesthetics, there's lots of different emotions that are evoked when you play Magic, such as frustration, deep thought, excitement, and shock. So there's definitely a lot of different learning principles too. There's multimedia and spatial contiguity, because there's graphics and verbal descriptions, right next to each other, next to an image, and they're all on the same card. For questioning, you definitely get lots of time to question your next move. For interleaving, you get to and variability, you get to intermix practice of different skills with all the different varied instances of strategy, and you get to activate preconceptions, because you get to cue your prior knowledge of Magic and Magic strategies. So some game modifications that I came up with. Number 1 is I came up with the idea of having a purple mana that represents outer space. So I came up with this idea as I was browsing through my cards, and it'll make the game better because it'll allow for more advanced strategies to take place, and it'll allow for more variety in the fantasy aspects of the game. For MDA, decks will be more often 2 or 3 colors, but this might mean that making the mana ratio correct in your deck might be a little bit harder. And then for aesthetics, players will experience feelings that they might feel when they are talking about UFOs and aliens and things like that. So for learning objectives, it'll place more emphasis on strategies and deck building, and it'll create more of a role-playing feel, which will expand the players' imaginations. For learning principles, it'll produce more variety in the strategies and fantasy aspects, which will force players to think differently in all different situations. For multimedia, the card will be purple and have a description and a symbol on it, just like all the other mana, and this could also be used for multicolor mana, for example. The other point that I came up with was the idea of a larger point scale. So I came up with this idea when I was browsing through my cards again. And it will make the game better because it will allow for more advanced addition and subtraction to occur in the game, and it'll allow for more variety of strength and toughness numbers. And for MDA, it won't affect the aesthetics or dynamics much, but it'll definitely affect the mechanics. It'll make the life points, the starting life points probably higher, and it will allow more uses of the 20-sided dice that are typically used to keep track of life points. For learning objectives, more emphasis will be placed on math functions and mental math. For learning principles, it'll force players to to use more advanced math knowledge with their game strategies simultaneously. And it will also call upon a player's prior knowledge of math functions a lot more often because students will improve their math skills by playing. For the TappWord portion of this assignment, I came up with some ideas for redesign, such as the positive feedback function. So I redesigned it so that the check is next to the correct answer versus just having a check and saying correct. I came up with this idea as I was playing the game, and it'll be more motivating because the child will remember that their specific choice was correct, and the child will be more excited that they got the question right. For the negative feedback, I also redesigned this part. I, again, just put the X next to the one that is wrong and the check next to the one that is correct. So for the negative feedback, I came up with this idea also as I was playing the game, and it would make the game more motivating because the child will be interested in what the right answer is if they get it wrong, and the child will be more engaged if they're given constructive feedback for learning purposes, and the child will have the desire to get the question right next time. Thank you very much.